Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inside. Now, America is less than 1 month away from removing its troops from Afghanistan, and that, of course, has created a power vacuum. And now there's a scramble to sort of fill that power void by many stakeholders in the region. What is that going to mean for the stability of the region? What is it going to mean for India? If China is trying to make up for that power void that is being created in the region, what will that mean for India, given the fact that we don't have the best relations with China right now? To answer all of those questions today, we're being joined by Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain, who was the former GOC of 15-4. He is the Chancellor of the Central University of Kashmir and also a member of the National Disaster Management Authority as well. So thank you so much for joining me on this program. Let me start with asking you, why do you think that the US has decided to remove all of its troops from Afghanistan now after 20 years? And do you think that they have achieved what they set out to do in the country?
First of all, it's a great pleasure to be on your program, right? And as to your question, a very relevant question which much of the world is asking today. 20 years. The United States went into Afghanistan with a purpose. Of course, it was a knee-jerk reaction to what happened to 9/11 at 9/11, and their purpose was to ensure that there would never again be an event of that nature which could be put together in the United States. Well, to some extent, they managed to achieve their aim of being able to neutralize Osama bin Laden, displace the Al Qaeda, displace the Taliban from power, but the ability to change the situation in Afghanistan, it could not achieve. And they realized this rather early. The United States never went in for conscription to fight in Afghanistan. Conscription was very much there during Vietnam, if you remember. So at the end of the day, it was a question of time. And Obama in 2008 had agreed to a surge, a temporary surge, which he said that we will have a surge, achieve our objectives, and even had drawn out 2012 as the date of withdrawal at that time. So the United States was never interested in persisting and staying there in Afghanistan. And to beat it all, the whole aspect of nation building was never an intent there. I would say this withdrawal at this time and such a sudden withdrawal is not something that has been very good as far as the region is concerned and the international order is concerned.
So, do you think that a Taliban takeover is imminent at this point, or do you think that peace negotiations between the Afghan government and the Taliban, do you think they can work, although they haven't worked so far?
See, it's an awkward situation where there are talks also taking place and there's intense fighting taking place, right? A lot of people wonder, how can a thing like this happen? Well, this is what usually happens in such situations. The Taliban is maximizing its advantage. It hopes that it will put the government of national unity under such intense pressure that at the end of the day, it will be a compromise and it will be a virtual walkover, even on the negotiating table and the battlefield, both. And therefore, this situation is what you see today. But whether there is accuracy in reporting of what exactly is the ground situation in Afghanistan, I'm not so sure. I find a lot of propaganda which is going on. Much of it emanates from Pakistan, who, as you are aware, hand in glove with the Taliban. They may not have the best of relationship today as it existed earlier, but Pakistan's interests are deeply wedded with the interests of the Taliban. So a lot of propaganda is put out about the kind of achievements they are making and things like that. Now you must remember the Afghan National Armed Forces, that is the Afghan National Security Forces, the army and the police put together is more than 350,000 strong. But to say that the Afghan National Army is a walkover, it would be a mistake. The ANA has its capabilities, it's done well to a great extent. It's not short on courage at all. They have lost on an average 8,000 soldiers killed every year in the last 4 years that I have counted. They've got a very good set of about 40,000 special forces. the Afghan National Army, and these special forces are going to make a major difference. I do foresee that there may be a change in the tide of the battle as we go along.
So, like you said, it's not a given that the Afghan government is going to fall and that the Taliban will take over. It's not a given thing. But in case that happens, if the Taliban does take over, what do you think it means for the country and for the region?
To imagine that the Taliban is what it was in 2001, or even worse, to imagine that the Taliban is what it was in 1996, or even worse, what it was in 1981, when the Taliban was actually created in the various madrasas and the seminaries which were set up in the refugee camps in the western Pakistan border, would be a fallacy. The Taliban has come a long way, and have also realized that they have to exist in this world. To think that they can be, hosting terrorist entities and leaderships here once again, and hoping and thinking that they are going to be the core center of Islamist movements of the world, etc. I think that is something of the past now. As it is, Islamist tendencies are generally receding, as you're seeing worldwide. Is happening in Saudi Arabia, much of Middle East, and places like that. The Taliban is in negotiation with Iran of all countries. Now you see hardcore Sunni Wahhabi Taliban and the hardcore Shia Iran are in negotiation with each other, and that's ground reality. So I think the Taliban has come, to an extent, has come of age. They also realize that they have to survive. Afghanistan has to survive. They will therefore need the tremendous support of the international community. So I think, much against the way it happened last time when you found Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Pakistan, only the three countries which recognized the Taliban, this time the Taliban coming to power may get recognized by many more countries. Russia, for example, China. I would put it past that India is also talking to the Taliban, maybe behind the scenes or whatever it is. This is realpolitik. This is what the situation is going to be on the ground in case we believe that the Taliban may come to power finally. So everyone is keeping their, fingers in different pies and hoping that the Taliban, if it comes to power at all, will act more responsible, will not kind of create that kind of turbulence in an area which is known to have been, so turbulent for the last 40, 50 years.
Speaking of India, how do you think that the rise of Taliban in Afghanistan affect India? Will it lead to a rise in terrorism, especially in Kashmir? And what was it like for India before Taliban was neutralized in 2001 by America?
You see, that's an interesting question which is put to me very often. Even many years ago, this question used to be put to me by various news people in Kashmir. And I used to always tell them, whatever happens in Afghanistan, some ripple effect of that will always be felt on Kashmir. Now, for example, the very fact that the United States is withdrawing after 20 years, seemingly without having succeeded in its mission completely, could possibly go as a lesson to a lot of people in this part of the world. It could go as a lesson to Kashmir, to a lot of people in Kashmir, to say that yes, you can fight a superior power, you can fight an external power if they perceive India as an external power, some of them, right? So to that extent, an inspiration, fledgling inspiration, will probably remain there. But besides that, the important aspect is that the situation in Kashmir and the situation in India is not what it was in 1989 or 1991. 1991 is the time when actually the Afghan mercenaries, after the end of the war in Afghanistan, started, getting recruited by the ISI and started getting inducted into Jammu and Kashmir. And they are the ones who actually sustained the early part of the fighting in Jammu and Kashmir was sustained by them, not by the local Hizbul Mujahideen so much. It is, and subsequently is the Lashkar-e-Toiba after 1996, something there. But for those first 5 years, 1991 to 1996, it was a very large segment of foreign terrorists and Afghans and many more jihadis who had fought in the war against the Soviets in the 80s. They were the ones who came into Kashmir. Will that be repeated this time? To my mind, no, it's not possible. Firstly, it's not easy to infiltrate into Kashmir any longer. Secondly, survival in Kashmir for foreign terrorists after our control over various networks is going to be much more difficult. Pakistan does not have funding. It does not have that kind of support. The way Pakistan is, bare open absolutely in front of the FATF today. Saudi Arabia doesn't support this kind of a thing at all. We have the best of relationships with the two most important countries of the Middle East, that is Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both of the two countries who recognized the Taliban last time. So to me, this is a different kettle of fish this time.
So multiple US presidents, starting from George W. Bush to as recent as Donald Trump, they have recognized Pakistan as the problem when it comes to the Taliban. Yet, no US government or military has been able to come up with a counter to the problem that Pakistan poses in harboring the Taliban. Even Biden, for that matter, now that they're withdrawing their forces, they've not really been able to come up with a solution to Pakistan as such. Do you think that Pakistan is the country that is going to be making the most gains from America leaving?
Pakistan has been fearing that with the problem going on in Afghanistan, potential civil war conditions could exist, and you will find an upsurge of refugees once again making their way across the Afghan-Pakistan border, and along with them, a lot of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan terrorists who had probably who had gone into Afghanistan will probably come back, and you will find a major internal security situation once again in Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan spent 4 years fighting the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in that operation called Zarb-e-Azb from 2014 to 2018 or so. So this is something which Pakistan is fearing, right? But Pakistan is known to play hand in glove in all kinds of different situations. It's one of the strange countries which can survive in a negative and a positive situation simultaneously.
Hmm.
The reason for it is, one of the reasons for it is, Pakistan's geostrategic location is such that it lends itself naturally to big powers looking forward to cooperation from Pakistan. The United States, for example, could not have fought a war in Afghanistan without the support of Pakistan, right? Karachi Harbour was required, the movement via Quetta was required to Kabul. You couldn't fight a war from Tajikistan or Turkmenistan and places like that through the airheads out there. China gets its access to the Indian Ocean, Northwest Indian Ocean, only through Pakistan. Or Russia, which is not a great friend of Pakistan, but it recognizes the fact that Pakistan is the crucible of jihadism, radicalism, and therefore it poses a great danger, a greater threat to the Central Asian republics, south to north. And the Central Asian republics are its immediate southern neighbor. And Russia recognizes that it's got an 11% Muslim population. Dagestan, Chechnya is fought an incidency in both these countries. So now you're seeing all the major powers, Russia, China, the United States, have something to take away from Pakistan, right? So that contributes to Pakistan's strategic importance. But the geopolitical situation of the world has changed. Everything is shifting from Middle East to the Indo-Pacific. China is wanting to make sure that the emphasis does not shift to the Indo-Pacific. It remains centered in the Middle East and Afghanistan, right? And that's why you're finding this sudden importance of China emerging in Afghanistan.
Right. So speaking about China, what sort of an opportunity do you think the Americans leaving will be for China? How is China going to benefit from this situation?
You see, two things in this. Number one, an extension of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, another arm of it going into Afghanistan, right, and taking control of that. Afghanistan has got a tremendous amount of mineral wealth. Much of that is already in the hands of the Chinese, who already bought the stakes there. Rare earths is something which is existent in fairly large quantum in Afghanistan, and the Chinese are always looking to exploit the availability of rare earths in any part of the world. So all this is advantageous to them, right? It's also important for them to make sure that they have a good relationship with Afghanistan, because they do not want any Taliban radical influence coming up into Xinjiang, where the Uyghur problem is continuing today, right? So they want to make sure of that. So the Chinese are looking for a relationship, a stronger relationship and influence over the Taliban to ensure that it keeps this area stable and away from problems which could be created on the western borders of China itself.
So now, with the American and NATO troops withdrawing, what do you think that the world, the international community, needs to do to ensure that Afghanistan is not pushed back into war again, and that a humanitarian crisis does not emerge? What do you think that the international community needs to do?
It has to be recognized that instability in this part of the world can actually affect the whole world.
Hmm.
You've seen the as far as the Islamic State is concerned, ISIS is still not dead. ISIS is still making efforts to try to fight out and find a location for itself in Afghanistan and potentially move into Central Asia. This threat, the threat of global terror, the threat of radical Islam, etc., this must be realized. It's not the end of the day as far as those threats are concerned. And therefore, some kind of a consensus has to appear. It's difficult to find that consensus because interests of each of these countries are different. China is different, Russia is different. Chinese and Russian interests may converge to a very great extent. The Americans are in negotiation with Taliban and are well supportive of the government of national unity today, but would not probably back them to the hilt. We are seeing very clearly that the vacation of Bagram Air Base, etc., which could have been awaited to the last, till the end, all that has already been done. So therefore, there really is no seriousness in supporting the government of national unity. And the Taliban is fully aware of that. So I think there's a bugger's muddle, as you call it, a very awkward term, but there's a muddle in Afghanistan at this time, and really no one knows how this is going to resolve itself. Everyone is imagining that the Taliban will eventually come to power and civilize Afghanistan. That's also not true. Because remember, the Taliban is Pashtun, essentially Pashtun in content. But Afghanistan is known to be a country of warlords. They've got the Tajiks, they've got the Uzbeks, they've got the Hazaras. There are interests of Iran also there. So I think it will take a little more time before some more clarity can really be obtained as to what the future situation can really be. But how the world gets together to resolve this beats us all at this moment.
Right. So final question, India's stance as of now on the Afghan issue is that there should be sincere talks between the government and the Taliban, and that is the only way forward for a peaceful resolution of the conflict.
Absolutely.
Do you think that that is the stance that India should continue to have on this matter, or do you think that it should be a little more aggressive? What's your stance on that?
My stance is I think the Indian government is doing the right thing by backing the government of national unity, which it has backed all these years. We have invested $3 billion of soft power. And we are one of the most popular nations as far as the public, the awam of Afghanistan is concerned. We perhaps made the mistake of not opening up a line of communication to the Taliban because we wanted to be seen more in the American camp and with the government of national unity, etc. That may have been a mistake, but a lot of Indian diplomats have been recommending for the last 3-4 years that we should open up a line of communication, which we have finally done. Now, a lot of people are questioning whether it is the right thing. How can you support the government of national unity and also talk to the Taliban? Now, this is something which has to be understood, that mature nations and diplomacy itself does not mean that you work in black and white silos. Morally, there's nothing wrong in speaking to the government of national unity and yet keep maintaining a line of communication with the Taliban. The Taliban has made it very clear that they have never spoken against India, that they really have no intent against India. So actually, we have nothing animostic as far as the Taliban is concerned. So I think the approach at the moment being followed is generally the right approach.
So thank you so much. This has been great. And I think you've given some really, really great perspective. Thank you so much.